Hi guys, welcome to my first January wrap up. So I feel like this would be a better way for me to review my books because I am not anywhere near as creative as Simon and I would not come up with the funny ideas or fit into the tiny wee dresses as he does. So they wouldn't be anywhere near as funny. So I thought I'll just sort of blitz out what I've read, give you guys my thoughts, and hopefully it's still quite entertaining even if I am nae fannying about in tiny wee tights. So first up for January for me, I read Heir of Fire by Sarah J Maas. Oh my god, was it epic. So I started the Throne of Glass series just at the end of last year and I've been absolutely blitzing them. Absolutely amazing books. I'm not going to dive into it too much because I plan to do a big review when I finish the series, which will probably be shortly because I am just devouring them at quite a rate. But I'll just give you a sort of a brief overview. So we follow our main character, Selena Sardothian, and she is an assassin. A theme for me, as we discovered in my TBR. I quite like an assassin book. And we're basically just following her journey. Oh, I hate that term. We're not following her journey. We are... I can't think of another way to put it now. We're basically just following her through her life. And she lives in another kingdom. It's set in a totally different world. The world is so immersive, it's so intriguing. There are wyverns and witches and fairies and shapeshifters and magical, mythical, monstrous creatures. It's fantastic. But I'll do a more in-depth review on these in my big end of the series wrap up, which will be quite good. But Heir of Fire was brilliant. My friend Claudia recommended this series to me and she says that this is her favourite one of the series and it certainly lived up to the hype. There was just amazing character development in this installment. There was a lot more of the sub-characters involved in this one. It didn't just really revolve around Selena. You got it from quite a lot of different people's perspectives, and in this one, because the story's advanced to such a point, they're all sort of on their own journeys and then coming together at some points and doing their own thing. So it was a nice wee shake up for it mainly just being around Selena. It was absolutely fantastic, really good character development. And I think with a lot of the characters up at this point, you could have maybe been on the fence about them or not had a huge opinion on them yet. They maybe hadn't been in the series enough, or they had just been briefly mentioned and you didn't feel like you really got to know them. And by the time this instalment comes along, like, you will not be on the fence. You will either love or you will hate these characters. I don't think that there's anybody on this, but at this point in the series you could be like, well, I'm not too sure. Like, you will either love them or detest them with a raging fury unknown to man. So I really loved that because there were a couple of characters I just couldn't quite get a handle on yet, and not because of the writing or because they hadn't really been developed. It was just because they hadn't been in the story as much. So by the time we get around to this installment, it really explores that and you're just like, nah. There's just an amazing relationship in the book between one of the witches and her wyvern, and her wyvern's called Abraxas, and oh my god, have I never rooted for an animal as much as I rooted for Abraxas in this book. He is my absolute favourite, and she loves Abraxas as much as I love Bailey. So yeah, absolutely amazing. If your book can get me like weeping and wooing and rooting for an animal that can't even talk, then you know it's some good ass writing. I felt in this one as well, the main character Selena really stepped it up. Felt like for the past couple of books we were just waiting for that moment where there was going to be a wee switch and her head go off and she was really going to step up and be who she was supposed to be, and that happened in this book and it did not disappoint. It was absolutely worth the wait. So yeah, Heir of Fire was amazing, and I would rate that 5 stars. It was fantastic. After Heir of Fire, I decided to have a wee bit of a break before I dived right into the next one in the series, although the temptation was there, let me tell you. I feel like that probably wouldn't be as interesting a video. So next up I read Convenience Store Women, and that's by Sayaka Murata. This is a story about our main character Kiko, and she's always felt a bit different. She's never really felt like she fitted in much with either her family or her classmates at school. She never really had a lot of friends, and she gets a job in a convenience store and it just clicks. She loves it. She loves the way she has to greet the customers. She loves that it's so regimented. She knows basically by this point she's worked in this convenience store for years and years and years. She's in her 30s now, and she got the job really when she was leaving school. She was in uni and she's worked there for all that time, so she is sort of in the rhythm of the store. It's one of those books where it is really character driven. If you're going into a book looking for an amazing plot line, it's probably not going to be it. There's not really a lot that happens in terms of plot. Not that that's a criticism, I think that is absolutely okay, because you just get drawn in and you just love Kiko for the get-go. I certainly did. So it's certainly not a bad thing that it's just solely focused on her. I really love that. I am a big character reader, so if you get me hooked on your character, and if I really love a character, I'm probably going to love the book. So this was absolutely fantastic. Basically, it's hard dealing with the pressures of society and dealing with the pressures of her family and friends. She's off that age. Women out there will feel me, where people are questioning, when are you going to meet somebody, and when are you going to start having kids, and when are you going to get a proper job, and she is off that age and people are hitting her with these questions, so she just sort of tends to shy away from it, because she doesn't really like having to go through the, oh well actually I'm just quite happy living my life, because that somehow is not an acceptable answer in today's society. And so she basically meets this guy who starts working at the convenience store with her, and they have a bit of a proxy relationship happening, basically so that he doesn't need to deal with the same questions and the same awkward answers for his family and friends, and she doesn't need to deal with it from hers. I would say quite an abusive relationship, not physically, but certainly mentally. The way he talks to Kiko, oh, it's just disgusting, absolutely dreadful. I can't believe that he would talk to her like that, but he did. He was a total wank. He was a total ball bag. So it was horrible to her, and in the end she was like, mate, I don't need this, I don't need you. It was brilliant though. I felt like for it being such a short book, it was really hard hitting. I felt like it dealt with quite a lot of good societal subject matter. So why do women get these questions, and why do men get these questions when they reach a certain age? Like, why can't somebody just be happy doing what they're doing and being who they're being? Why does society and their family and friends almost need to impose on them that what they're doing and who they are isn't enough? Like, that's absolutely bonkers. Like, everybody can just be happy living the life that they choose to live, and Kiko sort of discovers that in the end for herself. There's this whole terminology in it used mainly by her sister and mainly by our mum. Our parents really aren't in it that much. It's mainly our sister, but it is referenced, our relationship with our parents, where they say like, oh, we wish we could fix you. We wish you could meet somebody that would come and fix you. And Kiko doesn't really need fixed. She just has no interest in a relationship. Absolutely fine. And she has no interest in another career. She loves her shop, and her shop is the only place that's ever made her really feel comfortable and ever really made her feel like she fits in somewhat. Makes her feel like she's still a decent functioning member of society, and I don't know why that isn't enough. I was quite worried when I was getting to the end of this book that it was going to be like, oh, suddenly her and this guy were going to fall in love, and like it was going to be a bit of a happy ending, and I was like, I so hope that they don't do that, and I'm so glad that they didn't, because it was far more impactful that Kiko just had the realisation on her own, like, actually I don't need you, and I'll deal with people's questions if they ask. And I just really, really love stories where it's your sort of 30-something women who are just learning to love themselves. I think that is just so empowering and so beautiful. Very reminiscent of Eleanor Oliphant for me. Just that sort of, well, this is the way I've always been, like, and this is who I am, love me or leave me kind of moment, which I just think's brilliant. I think that probably I'm 28. So probably people who are around my age and sort of in middle 30s grew up with TV shows as well. I can only really talk for British TV, but British TV, like You Are What You Eat and Got Gwan and like Super Size versus Super Skinny and 10 Years Younger, Snog, Marry, Avoid, like all of this media that was just bombarded at you and basically taught you to hate your body. And I just love when now that we've sort of moved away from that and we're in a lot more of a body positive movement, and I think actually just more of a you do you, I'll do me kind of world, which is absolutely fantastic, that they're releasing books like this where it's women who are a wee bit older, who are finding that empowerment and really learning to love themselves. I think that that's just really inspiring, and I thought it was an absolutely fantastic book. So for me, I didn't cast any of the characters in my head other than Kiko, because I guess everybody else is just a secondary character. So the only person that I cast was Kiko. I cast her as Lim Soo Young in my head. I know her from the film I'm a Cyborg, and That's Okay. So that's just who she was in my head when I was imagining it. I think that because the character she portrays in I'm a Cyborg and That's Okay obviously is a cyborg, so at times she can be quite robotic, and she certainly had that feeling of not really fitting in society, and feeling like she was a bit different. So I feel like it just sort of, it was a perfect fit. I feel that the way Kiko could try and mimic someone sometimes, or she was in a situation where she'd recall somebody had spoken like this, so she was going to speak like that, somebody had worn something, and just in her monologue at times, and the way she would react to customers in different situations in the store could have been quite robotic. So that was just the association that made in my head. But yeah, an absolutely amazing book. I'd really recommend it to anybody who wants a short easy read. I read it in a day. It was fantastic. I couldn't put it down. It was to the point where every time Simon was going to make a cup of tea, I was getting another couple of pages in. It was just fantastic. Overall, I'd give this book 5 stars. I thought it was fantastic, really heartwarming. You really get to know and love the character of Kiko. I thought it was a really good read and made some really good societal commentary as well, which we love. Next up for me, I read Cry the Sea by D.G. Driver. This was recommended to me on Facebook. I had asked on one of the book groups that I'm in for mermaid novels. We love a mermaid novel. I mean, I am an Ariel addict, hence the red hair. She is my favourite Disney princess. Yes, so Cry the Sea, marketed as a mermaid but pollution novel, and we love some environmentalism, so I was like, that sounds brilliant. Again, it's the first in a trilogy, so thought, what's my catchphrase? Get the first one, see if I like it, buy the rest of the series, and then never do it. But I actually won't be buying the rest of this series. So I felt like the character of June, she was fairly one-dimensional. I feel like you never really get to know her, as well as other characters that I've read in other books. And it felt sort of, it was like 3 books in one. So the main premise is obviously June, teenage girl, she's just leaving high school. Her mum and dad are both environmental activists, so they're sort of pushing her down the environmental activist route. She doesn't want to go down that route. She wants to live her own life. Still wants to help, so she wants to go and she wants to learn to be a conservationist and basically learn how to help animals after oil spills. She can go and she can clean them up and she can try and save some of the wildlife, whereas her mum and dad are far more interested in taking down the big oil companies and stopping oil spills. And they feel like her cause isn't as great as theirs almost. Like, they're taking down the big oil companies and she's just helping the animals, whereas if they take down the companies, then the animals aren't going to need the help. So they sort of feel like their cause is greater than hers, and it causes some animosity between them. there's not really a lot of mermaids in this book. So I was quite disappointed because I was expecting there to be quite a lot of mermaids. Her mum's away, she's working on taking down this oil company, and there's an oil tanker supposed to be passing near where her and her dad are living, and there's an oil spill. So they get there, they're first on the scene, and they discover mermaids, and the mermaids are choking on the oil and dying like the rest of the marine life. They decide that they need to get the mermaids the hell out of Dodge, otherwise it's going to be a social media swarm, and they don't want basically the wrong people to get a hold of them. The oil companies and such are trying to cover anything up, so they basically try to take these mermaids away from the scene so that they're not going to be abused by science, which again, fair. But then after there, it just sort of really goes downhill. It feels a bit like 3 books in one. So there's some scenes where the environmentalism and the scenes of the oil spill described are really hard hitting, and I love that. I felt like I was learning, and these are obviously aimed at younger teenagers, so maybe teenagers who aren't as aware environmental issues going on. This could really help open their minds, which is absolutely fantastic. And then it would go from being a really hard-hitting environmentalist story to there being teenage high school drama, because June doesn't really fit in high school, and it just felt like I was reading 3 different books at times. So I was reading a sort of a oil company conspiracy cover-up with all these oil spills, which interesting, and then there was occasionally a scene with a mermaid. They were few and far between, no enough of that in my opinion. I felt like they could have really explored the mermaid side of it, and I don't know honestly if they're going to do that further on in the series. It's a trilogy, so they might, but I just feel like if your first one's not going to grip you, what's the point in reading the rest of the series? I feel like they could have had a lot more for the mermaids in this, and it would have really helped sell it, but she didn't. It was just a bit of a miss. So yeah, I just felt like there wasn't enough mermaids in it. I feel like it could have been far more interesting if she had the mermaids in it more, and it was more about them, because it's their habitat as well that's being abused and polluted, and I just felt like there wasn't enough of that. I like the use of social media in it, so I think that basically there's a video that she takes of her and these mermaids, and the video goes viral, so I think that it was good in the sense of internet awareness, especially for younger readers, making sure that you know what you're putting out on the internet and what the consequences of that are. So again, a really great standpoint and really informative if you're maybe a younger reader. For me personally though, I found it a bit boring. The character of June was a really weird one as well, because I feel like she was written in the mindset, like I feel like the author wrote her in the mindset of wanting to write a role model, and I think that there's so many amazing literary role models that you don't really need to write your character with that in mind. But I just felt like she was so stereotypically written. I felt like she was really one-dimensional, and you never really get that attachment to her that much. And I feel like it is because the author was so focused on just making sure that she was such a moral, upstanding citizen, that she had a lot of respect for her parents, that, you know, she was really trying to educate people, she was starting recycling initiatives at school, and I'm not saying that any of that is bad at all. I just feel like that shouldn't be the only things that we learn about her as a character. Like, she's a teenage girl, she'll have her own thoughts, she'll have her own feelings, she'll have her own passions, and I feel like none of that was really explored because we were basically focused on her great acts. So I feel like the author really did write her in mind with her being a role model, and it took away from her actual character development. And then again, there's so many great points in the book. I've already spoke before about like the environmental aspects and the social media aspects, and that being great and really, really informative and educational for younger readers, which is fantastic. But then she has the most horrible relationship with her parents. So her mum's really, really distant. She doesn't really get on with her mum, and she usually gets on with her dad, but they have this big argument at the beginning of the book because she wants to go to a different uni. She doesn't want to go to the uni that they want her to go to, and she doesn't want to study what they want her to study. But I find the relationship there to be really odd, and for the book to be so wholesome, and for her to be such a great person, and for the author to have made her such a role model, and for her to make such points about social media and the environmental side of things, I felt like for her not to pick up on the fact that she had such an awful relationship with her parents and that isn't alright was such a miss. Because I think that a young adult book where the main character maybe doesn't have a completely kosher relationship with her parents would actually be a great thing. I think that there's not enough of that. I think that there's books certainly where parents die and it's about the kids learning to deal with that, but I don't think there's really books where the kids just have a really tumultuous, difficult relationship with their parents and how they both overcome that, or potentially they don't overcome that, and then how that kid distances themselves from their parents. So I feel like if you're going to write a book that is so preachy, because I felt at times it was preachy, to not have made that point was just a miss. It just felt like a bit of a disconnect for me. So yeah, I'll not be continuing this series, and not just because I'm lazy and I'm starting 18 other ones, just because I really, really didn't like it. The only character in this that I cast was our main character June. So I cast June as Nicole Munoz, and I know her from a show she was in, Defiance. So she was who was in my head, but she was really the only character that I cast. And again, I think it's just because I had been watching Defiance recently, so she was already sort of in my head. I don't think that I thought of her because the character was really well developed, or because there was any attributes or anything that I would assign to June that Nicole portrays. I think she was just a fairly generic go-to in my brain. But yeah, I was really disappointed on this, my first mermaid book in 2021, and it was a miss. So I would rate this book 1 star. Next up, I read Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan Maguire. I'm not going to go into too much detail about this book because I already have a full video up about this book. I did a buddy read with Kit from Kit's World, so you can check out the video if you want to know my in-depth thoughts. Just really quickly, we follow our main character Nancy, and she goes to a school where all these other kids have went missing, and they go to this other school basically to learn how to deal and cope with the normal world again. But it so turns out that the kids actually haven't went missing at all, and they all opened a doorway to another world, and they went and they lived in this other world for a period of time, and then they've now come back. We're basically dealing with trying to navigate real life again, and obviously not a lot of people is going to believe them about what's going on, so they're in this school where it's happened to everybody else as well, and you learn about their worlds. Someone starts murdering people, so it's a wee bit of a murder mystery. To be honest, I didn't really like this book very much. I didn't connect to any of the characters particularly. I didn't think it was very well written, and it's another series that I won't be continuing this year. I think that if this book wasn't as short as it was, I probably would have DNF'd it. I usually try to get to about 100 pages, and if I'm not feeling a book, then I would DNF. And if this one wasn't as short as it was, I probably would have DNF'd it, but I felt like it was a bit cheeky to DNF it after 100 pages. Probably the same goes for Cry of the Sea, to be honest. If it wasn't such a short book, I would have DNF'd that as well. I felt like there were so many times where this book could have been amazing, and there were so many opportunities and avenues that the story could have gone down, and it just didn't. And on paper, this is right up my street. It's everything that I like in a book. It's a bit geeky, it's a bit quirky, it's a bit fantasy, LGBTQ rep, but it wasn't for me, unfortunately. My soundtrack for Every Heart a Doorway was Placebo, Every You, Every Me. It's one of my absolutely favourite Placebo songs, and again I think it was just a really easy link because it's Every Heart a Doorway, Every Me, Every You. So yeah, that was my song for this book. Next up for me then was the chonky Queen of Shadows, the next one in the Throne of Glass series, and this is Abraxas on the cover. Oh, love him so much. This was absolutely amazing. It was a hell of a ride. So many twists that you just didn't see coming. So much heartbreak, and then like so much happiness at the end of the book. It was just a real roller coaster, and this has actually been my favourite instalment in the book so far. In the series so far, it was just absolutely fantastic. I could not put it down. It got to the point where I'd be sitting and me and Simon would maybe be watching something on the TV, and I'd like start thinking about the book, and he'd be like, "Are you alright?" Because like, you're off a quiet, you're zoning out, and I'm like, I am just thinking about my book. Like, I can't stop thinking about it. I was so obsessed. It was just amazing. I can't even describe, which makes it a fairly poor review, how good this was, but it was just amazing. There's so much more in the witches in this book, which I really love as well. I have been interested in the witch characters from the very beginning of the book, and I was messaging my friend who's also read the series, and I was like, I hope there's more witches, like there better be more witches, because again, we love a witch. And we get so much perspective and so much story from Manon Blackbeak, who's just my favourite character. Probably in the full series, maybe. Her and Dorian are like neck and neck for me. But yeah, she's just, she's amazing. She takes absolutely no bullshit, and she just knows exactly who she is. She knows exactly what she wants. She knows how she's going to get it. She has a loyal following. Her and her 13, and the relationships between them are just absolutely fantastic. It's like so much girl power. Like, see if the Spice Girls were fantasy, it would be the 13. Can I just tell you, it is class. So I just love that you got so much for her perspective this book, because she's just, she's so amazing, so amazing. She'll just call you out if she thinks that you're lying, if she thinks that you're up to something. She's just so upfront about it. She's absolutely fantastic, and she's just so fierce. It's amazing. So I was so happy that we got more of her this book. So yeah, again, I absolutely devoured this. It was just so phenomenal, and I actually ended up at the end of this, every time I've finished one, I've just near enough jumped straight into the next one. But after this one, I actually had a bit of a book hangover, because it was just so good, and I felt so many emotions. It was like that Mean Girls meme, I'm just gonna have a lot of emotions. It was fantastic, and it was just so good. I would give this one 5 stars for me. And then lastly this month I read The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. I've seen the film lots of times, but I've never ever read the book. And me and Simon watched the film recently, and he fell asleep. So I thought, why not make him read the book? Because if he didn't like the film, he's obviously going to love the book. It's a great wee story. Our main character is Mary Lennox, and she is English, but she lives with her parents in India, and she doesn't really have a great relationship with her parents, to be honest. They are so wrapped up in their own lives, they don't pay her the slightest bit of attention. So it's basically their servants that are raising her, so she's not ever had a real parental influence. So she's spoiled AF and is a total brat. Our parents die and she moves back to England to go and live with her uncle. However, her uncle's fairly estranged as well. He doesn't really live in the house that they live in. He's quite distant and goes away for work a lot and distances himself from his son, Mary's cousin. So again, she's left in an environment where it's mainly servants who are looking after her, and the English servants are wildly different from the Indian servants, and they don't take her shite. So it's a bit of a coming of age story for Mary. She's dealing with her own grief as well as dealing with other people's grief around her at the loss of her aunt, and it's basically about how she just navigates in her new environment with her new surroundings, new people, and she really discovers herself. It's a really beautiful story. I feel like it is just so British, like British coming out your eyeballs. It could not be any more British, but it's just lovely. The characters for me, I just imagine the characters from the film, obviously because I've grown up watching the film, but yeah, it's just absolutely fantastic. Really good character development in it, and there's really good dynamic between Mary and the other characters, and especially between her and her cousin. So her cousin, if you could believe it, is even more spoiled than her, and by the time Mary gets introduced to her cousin, because her cousin's extremely ill, so he doesn't allow visitors and basically just keeps himself to himself, by the time she goes to meet him, the sort of spoiledness is sort of already eased off a bit, and she's grown up, she's matured a lot, so by the time she meets him, she's like, what are you playing at, pal? You're a nonsense. And so they have a really interesting dynamic. It's just a lovely wee family story, I feel, where everybody has their own problems and their own issues going on, and they're all grieving in their own way. They're all grieving in their own way for their own losses, and in the end they all come together and help each other through their grief. It's just absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed it. We will be doing a book 101 on this, so I'll reserve any more of my thoughts for that. A 5-word review for me for The Secret Garden would be grief with Rosie's in that. It's absolutely fantastic, and it got a 4-star review from me. That was it for my January reads. I feel like I did quite well in January. For the past few years I haven't really been reading as much as I would usually. Just not really having the time, and I just never was making it a priority. I feel, even though we have so many beautiful books, I just felt like sometimes I'd be coming home and I'd be so drained from work that the last thing that I wanted to do would be to pick up a book. And then I felt like last year, with everything that happened during the pandemic, I needed an escape more than ever, and I really put a focus on it last year, especially the end of last year, and I really read some absolutely amazing books, so I want to keep it up this year and be making sure that I am reading a fair few. I've set my Goodreads at 35 just because that's more than I read last year, so it's still an improvement, but with the TBR that I have built, it will be more than 35, I hope. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon. Bye. Don't tell me that mic wasn't on that whole time.